Hello listeners. Today we will discuss about the attitude. Attitude. Do you believe in aliens? What's your opinion about hunting? Should every child learn a foreign language at school? These questions may be seemingly unrelated, but it's likely you have strong opinions about them. People spontaneously evaluate things, developing opinions, and forming likes and dislikes about everything around us is part of our daily lives. These attitudes affect the way we live and the choices we make. Attitude is an important topic of study within the field of social psychology. Let me ask you, what exactly is an attitude? How does it develop? Continue listening to learn more about how psychologists define this concept, how attitudes influence our behavior, and things we can do to change attitudes. What is an attitude? It is a learned tendency to evaluate things in a certain way. Lasting patterns of beliefs and opinions which predispose reactions. An enduring organization of motivational, emotional, perceptual, and cognitive processes with respect to some aspect of the individual's world. Psychologists define attitudes as a learned tendency to evaluate things in a certain way. This can include evaluations of people, issues, objects, or events. Such evaluations are often positive or negative, but they can also be uncertain at times. For example, you might have mixed feelings about a particular person or issue. Attitudes are lasting patterns of beliefs and opinions which predispose reactions. An attitude can be also defined as an enduring organization of motivational, emotional, perceptual, and cognitive processes with respect to some aspect of the individual's world. These definitions emphasize the nature of attitudes and their close relationship to individuals' behavior. Some sociologists and psychologists even defined attitudes simply in terms of the probability that a person will show a specified behavior in a specified situation. Now, the attitude component. Attitude consists of affective, cognitive, and behavioral components. Now, what is an affective component? This involves a person's feelings / emotions about the attitude object. For example, I am scared of spiders. Now, what is behavioral components? Behavioral components include the way the attitude we have influences how we act or behave. For example, I will avoid spiders and scream if I see one. Now, what is cognitive component? This involves a person's belief or knowledge about an attitude object. For example, I believe spiders are dangerous. This model is known as the ABC model of attitudes. Now, what are the dimensions of attitudes? Researchers study 3 dimensions of attitude, and they are strength, accessibility, and ambivalence. Now, the attitude strength. Strong attitudes are those that are firmly held and that highly influence behavior. attitudes that are important to a person tend to be strong. Attitudes that people have a vested interest in also tend to be strong. Furthermore, people tend to have stronger attitudes about things, events, ideas, or people they have considerable knowledge and information about. Attitude accessibility. The accessibility of an attitude refers to the ease with which it comes to mind. In general, highly accessible attitudes tend to be stronger. Attitude ambivalence. The ambivalence of an attitude refers to the ratio of positive and negative evaluations that make up that attitude. The ambivalence of an attitude increases as the positive and negative evaluations get more and more equal. How do attitudes form? Attitudes form as a result of experience. They may emerge due to a direct personal experience, or they may result from an observation. Social roles and social norms can have a strong influence on attitudes. Social roles relate to how people are expected to behave in a particular role or context. Social norms involve society's rules for what behaviors are considered appropriate. Classical conditioning. Attitudes can be learnt in a variety of ways. Consider how advertisers use classical conditioning to influence your attitude towards a particular product. In a television commercial, you see famous football players drinking soda drink. This attractive and appealing imagery causes you to develop a positive association with this particular beverage. Now, operant conditioning. Operant conditioning can also be used to influence how attitudes develop. Imagine a young man who has just started smoking. Whenever he lights up a cigarette, people complain, chastise him, and ask him to leave their vicinity. This negative feedback from those around him eventually causes him to develop an unfavorable opinion of smoking, and he decides to give up the habit. Finally, people also learn attitudes by observing the people around them. When someone you admire greatly espouses a particular attitude, you are more likely to develop the same beliefs. For example, children spend a great deal of time observing the attitudes of their parents and usually begin to demonstrate similar outlooks. How do attitudes influence behavior? We tend to assume that people behave in accordance with their attitudes. However, social psychologists have found that attitudes and actual behavior are not always perfectly aligned. After all, plenty of people support a particular candidate or political party and yet fail to go out and vote. Researchers have discovered that people are more likely to behave according to their attitudes under certain conditions. When your attitudes are the result of personal experience, when you are an expert in the subject, when you expect a favorable outcome, when the attitudes are repeatedly expressed, when you stand to win or lose something due to the issue. Now, the cognitive Dissonance. In some cases, people may actually alter their attitudes in order to better align them with their behavior. Cognitive dissonance is a phenomenon in which a person experiences psychological distress due to conflicting thoughts or beliefs. In order to reduce this tension, people may change their attitudes to reflect their others' beliefs or actual behaviors. Attitude change. While attitudes can have a powerful effect on behavior, they are not set in stone. The same influences that lead to attitude formation can also create attitude change. Researchers have proposed three categories to account for attitude change: learning theory, dissonance theory, and the elaboration likelihood model. Learning theory. Learning theory says that attitudes can be formed and changed through the use of learning principles such as classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. Classical conditioning. The emotional component of attitudes can be formed through classical conditioning. For example, in a billboard ad, a clothing company pairs a sweater with an attractive model who elicits a pleasant emotional response. This can make people form a positive attitude about the sweater and the clothing company. Operant conditioning. If someone gets a positive response from others when she expresses an attitude, that attitude will be reinforced and will tend to get stronger. On the other hand, if she gets a negative response from others, that attitude tends to get weaker. Observational learning. Seeing others display a particular attitude and watching people be reinforced for expressing a particular attitude can make someone adopt those attitudes. Dissonance theory. Leon Festinger's dissonance theory proposes that people change their attitudes when they have attitudes that are inconsistent with each other. Festinger said that people experience cognitive dissonance when they have related cognitions that conflict with one another. Cognitive dissonance when they have related cognitions that conflict with one another. Cognitive dissonance results in a state of unpleasant tension. People try to reduce the tension by changing their attitudes. The elaboration likelihood model. The elaboration likelihood model holds that attitude change is more permanent if they elaborate and thought-provoking persuasive messages are used to change the attitude. Basically, if someone can provide a thought-provoking persuasive message to change an attitude, he is more likely to succeed than if he provides a neutral or shallow persuasive message. Thanks and regards. Thank you, listeners.